Ready, Jan?
Are these microphones even being used?
Yeah. No? Are these not being used?
You want to keep them there for consistency,
Shall we take them out, or shall we keep... or what do you think?
Or does it look more interviewee with the microphones?
I think it's fine.
Okay.
We can do it this way instead. Right. Hello everyone and welcome back. As you can see, we are still here at Connect Marketplace BizBash in Detroit. And I'm here now having the next interview. Sorry, I completely forgot what I'm about to do. But yes, we're having a chat or an interview. Barry Rinehart, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
You're welcome. So Barry, it got very loud all of a sudden. The music has started again.
There's a live event and live music is playing.
It really is. It was just quiet whilst we were sitting here beforehand.
Let's just pretend it's our theme music.
I know, exactly. It's our intro music. Okay. Anyway, so Barry, you're the Global Creative Director for Genpact.
That's correct.
And also you have another interesting title, which I absolutely love. It's Master Guru of Storytelling.
That is the title they've given me, yes.
I know, and I love that. And that is for Genpact's Genome?
Well, so we have an educational program in our company, and they take different knowledge experts on different subjects, and they're appointed to be master gurus of that subject matter. And so the educational program is called Genome, and it's a great draw for employees to have this, they can get an education while they work at the company and upskill and be able to do other things. So my area of focus is helping people become great storytellers, great presenters, but also help them with their executive presence and just, communication skills.
Yeah, of course, which is super important, right? And you said to me before we started the interview that your job is also then to find more gurus, right?
A part of what I'm asked to do is identify people who could also, because it's the idea of, it should never be one person.
No,
there's different people have different perspectives, they have different experiences, different strengths, especially with storytelling.
Yeah.
And so I have a team of gurus that I have one couple in Romania, several in India, so around the world, Australia, Philippines. And so we help run sessions of these training sessions. We often pair up to do them. And it's a great, for me, it's one of my favorite parts of the job.
Oh, amazing.
I've already been able to work with over 15,000 employees.
Yeah.
So it's been really interesting. And I learned so much from doing it too.
Of course, as you said, it's all about everyone has different perspective, different backgrounds, different knowledge that, that's what we should thrive from, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that brings me on to the subject what we're really here to talk about today. Obviously, your expert field, which is storytelling. Why is storytelling so important?
Well, stories, I think everyone knows this, but it's good to be reminded. I mean, stories connect people. Stories change perspectives. Stories have the potential to open eyes, open hearts. Stories show us the way sometimes. Stories are just so powerful. And so often people want to give information, but information's forgotten. But stories are remembered because stories tap into different parts of the brain and sort of bring things to life. So I'll ask you this question. I ask people this question in some of my sessions, what's one of the earliest stories you remember from your childhood? Maybe from a parent, a grandparent, a teacher?
You know what? I think it's actually, oh my God, I've forgotten the name now. It's about 3 bears. And then they go outside and there's a little girl falling asleep in their bed and eat their porridge.
And you remember who told you that story?
I don't know, actually.
Okay, so you remember the story.
Yeah, I remember the story.
So one of my earliest memories, I think I was about 6 years old, so it's maybe not that early, but it was connected to stories. I certainly had Dr. Seuss books and things like that, but I have this memory of my father reading me a chapter from the book Robin Hood. Every night he'd read me a different chapter till we got to that last chapter. And in this version of the story, Robin Hood's an old man. He's about to die. He's in his deathbed. And he says, hand me a bow, hand me an arrow, there's an open window, and he pulls back and shoots this arrow out the window and says, wherever that arrow lands, that's where I want to be buried. And it was just so powerful and emotional. Yet I'm 58 years old now.
Yeah.
So that's been somehow stuck between my ears for over 50 years. And that, so that's the power of stories to actually stick with people and be influential. And the reason it works is because they're emotional. And they bring up, with our imagination, vivid imagery. So when I said that, you were picturing a certain room, a certain bow, a certain, but I was picturing something else, and my father, I'm sure, was, and the writer was. So I don't know. It's to me, the potential as you communicate with somebody. Maybe they'll be on their deathbed and go, I remember that story that someone told me. I mean, hopefully they'll be remembering happier family things and personal things, but the power to make an impression that lasts for the rest of someone's life is there with the story. And to me, that's both intriguing and exciting, the potential of that.
Well, you know what, actually, I have read a lot about this. It also has to do with the brain, right? The information the brain takes in. You know, I work in sales, and I keep on saying that, you know, it doesn't matter if you're trying to sell, you know, facts and figures to a person. That's not what they're going to remember. They're going to remember the emotional connection that they had to what you were telling them, or if they trust you. That's the same in storytelling then. Like, that's exactly what it is.
In sales, they'll say data tells, stories sell.
Yeah.
And it's the meaning behind things is often connected to a story.
Yeah.
Every story is about a human being struggling to achieve something and having to overcome obstacles, and typically they're somehow transformed in the process of that.
Yeah.
And so as you, as a salesperson, are talking to potential clients or existing clients, they're on a journey. They're trying to achieve certain goals. You want to help them. You're not the hero of the story. They're the hero of the story.
Yeah, exactly.
And you want to give them the tools to fight the dragons that they're facing and to conquer them and change and transform to something better as a result.
And is that sort of what you try and tell people? You said you work on presentation skills as well. Is it to try and focus not so much about maybe the details, but the story that they tell?
Well, it's storytelling. So there's the stories, and then there's how you tell the stories too.
Okay.
So it's a combination of both. And I tend to focus more on the telling side than the story side. But just tomorrow morning, I have to give a presentation to a group of people, and they want to know, how do you use data in storytelling? And I was like, it's hard because our company, Genpact, we help businesses do what they already do really well, but just do it better using technologies, using data, using things like that. So data is a big part of what we do. But I realized all of a sudden, it's like the mistake a lot of people make is they present the notes of the music rather than the song.
Yeah.
You know, so they're showing all the notes, and here's the cornet part, and here's the timpani part, and here's this part. That's the data, but sing them the song. You know, let them know what the reason of that data is, the melody, the purpose of it, and then it has more meaning for people. So story and narratives are very useful tools, and the storytelling techniques like metaphors are great. I just use one, you know, with that to help explain something. But I play a game with some of the more advanced storytellers where I have them. They have to give a presentation of who they are and what they do for the company, and it has to be 2 to 3 minutes, no longer, no less. But just before they begin, I go, oh, by the way, I'm going to give you a word, and I need you to talk about that word and then use it as a metaphor for what you're doing. Yeah. And so I have this stack of cards with just random words like trumpet, carpet, medicine. Like my favorite story is this. I did this with a guy in New Delhi, India. Yeah. And his word he pulled up was giraffe. And he's like, I don't know. I said, it's fine. Just start talking about giraffes. Yeah. Trust your brain. Your brain will find a connection. And he's like, all right. Well, I guess the first giraffe I ever saw was at the Delhi Zoo. My parents took me there, and I remember looking up at it, and my father told me a fact about giraffes. He said it's the tallest mammal there is. And then that reminded him of something else in his brain. He went, oh, you know, I actually know another fact about giraffes. I think it's from a nature show I saw, that there used to be 9 different species of giraffes. Now there's only 2. Now there's only 4. And then he goes, so why is that? He goes, well, it's because their environments changed and they couldn't adapt, or a predator came and they couldn't, beat them, and so they were killed off. And then his brain found the connections. Like in business, businesses are challenged by changing environments.
Yeah.
Businesses are challenged by disruptors. So then he was off and running to talk about his thing. So it's just, these are sort of fun activities and things we help teach people to just think on their feet better.
I really just want to talk about giraffes now.
Of course.
They're a nice animal.
Yeah.
So in terms of events, obviously I know that, Genpact isn't, in the events industry per se, but you obviously have a background in that. Why, what would you say to people if, they're listening in, they don't think they're using storytelling in events? Like, what can they do? What should they look at?
Well, storytelling is a tool that can be used. Your event is a big story if you think about it.
Yeah.
It has a sort of a beginning, everything leading up to the event.
Yeah.
Then there's the event itself.
Yeah.
That may be a few hours long, it may be several days long, it may be a week long. And then there's what happens after the event. And what's interesting about storytelling is, if, let's say, the event didn't go well, but you still have the opportunity to tell the story of the event afterwards and show the best moments. And so maybe there's some technical difficulties. Well, you can actually change people's memories by reinforcing certain stories after an event. And so when they recall it, they don't remember what maybe actually happened. They'll remember the story they heard about what actually happened. An example of that is, if you've been married and you have a video of your wedding, and you've watched that video so many times, you start to remember the video maybe than your actual, what happened to you. Or family photos sometimes. As you remember things, you're remembering family photos, maybe not the actual events. So that's an example of how the brain sort of, when something's repeated, it can change how you remember something.
You remember it. And to be honest, it's a good point. I keep on saying to people, everyone is always on their phone when they're attending events nowadays. And I'm like, but you're not getting to create that experience. Put your phone down.
Right.
Just like, that's the whole thing, right?
We're so not used to just being still and being in the moment.
Yeah.
And it's hard. And like, here we are right now, surrounded by a lot of stimulus, a lot of multisensory stimulus. And it's hard to just zoom in and focus on things. But that's, again, another reason why it's good to think about telling the story you're going to tell before they arrive. So they're primed for that story. Then you tell that story at the event, and then you tell them that, again,
exactly.
This is the other story at the end. And there's all kinds of techniques that are used.
Absolutely. So you mentioned something really interesting that I'm interested in myself personally as well: multisensory experiences. I used to work in catering, and that was a key thing that I always used to work at. Like, you can't just think about the taste. You got to think about how it looks, like how does it smell, like what does it feel like if you touch it. Not that you should maybe like play with the food or whatever we should, but that's super important. And that must be very important in events in general, right?
Well, when you introduced me, one of the ways I describe myself is I'm a professional memory maker.
Yes.
That's what we all are in events. We're crafting memories for people.
Yeah.
And so what the brain remembers is multiple sensory inputs. So we have different parts of the brain, parts that take in the hearing, as you said, the textures, the aromas, all these different things. And so the more multi-sensory stimuli that you can put in, the more likely something's going to be more memorable. So often in events, they focus on AV, audio and visual. But as you said, you're looking around this space where there's comfortable chairs, there's people serving food, some people are serving ice cream. There are some aromas. Usually at conventions, the main aroma is new carpet. That's kind of the toxic
Yeah.
smell that you get hit with when you walk in. But as I was walking around here, I was picking up on other scents.
Yeah.
I've used scent machines for live events before. I did a big keynote speech for a major bank that was taking place in Texas, and the bluebells were blooming at that time. And so he wanted to, help him with the speech, talk about how the bluebells were a metaphor for this unique event and experience they want to create for their customers.
Yeah.
So they had this big wide screen, and we went and did drone shoots over the bluebells. And then I went and found bluebell scent and put scent machines around the audience. So as they watched this, they weren't conscious that they were smelling it, but we reinforced it. So when he spoke about the bluebells and used it as a metaphor, it came to life for people, and hopefully more memorable than it would have otherwise. So you can be very strategic with how you use the senses.
And that's the thing. It's the same with food, right? You know, when you smell popcorn or pizza or whatever it is, you become hungry,
right.
Or like, it sets off different things. Like the brain is a very complicated thing, right?
Well, as kids, we were taught there's only 5 senses, but there's actually dozens and dozens of senses. But gustoception, which is eating, it does involve smell, it involves texture, it involves temperature, it involves all these different things. And so that's why food and memories often go together really well.
Yeah. And so you've got keynote here as well, where you're saying it's the flirty dozen. So you're talking about 12 emotional ingredients for creating intimate events. Can you give us a couple of the top tips that you will be mentioning? I know you're still working on it.
Well, I'll tell you what the 12 are.
Yeah.
And it's embarrassing, but it's aha, ha ha, ah, huh? Oh, ow, ooh, yes. So those are the top 12.
Amazing.
And I'll talk about what those all are, but you get a sense of kind of what they
I will watch the keynote, and I will report back to the audience.
There are others. There are other emotions that come into it too. That that we want to avoid in live events, like ew.
Yeah.
Or,
no. That's not a good one.
Nah.
Yeah.
So it's and so part of what I've been asked to speak about is how do we use emotions to create intimacy in events, and I'm still trying to figure that out myself. So
well, it's all a learning curve, right?
That's right.
And honestly, thank you so much for joining me. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Me too.
And good luck tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining us. We'll be back shortly with another interesting interview. Thank you for tuning in.